The late afternoon sun had begun to dip behind the thick pines of Shiloh County, casting long, sharp shadows across the cracked back roads and faded signs that seemed to whisper stories of a past never fully gone. It was the kind of small southern town where people said things like, "We treat everyone the same here." With the same breath, they used to clutch their purses tighter or lock their doors at a red light. Quiet on the surface, yes, but only if you weren't looking too closely. 14-year-old Malia James hadn't done anything wrong. She was just walking home. Her school bag hung from one shoulder, heavy with books and hope. Her sneakers kicked small pebbles off the roadside as she hummed quietly to herself, counting steps and thinking about her mom's cooking. Malia was smart, sharp like lightning, the kind of girl who spoke softly but always left you thinking. Her dream? To become a civil rights attorney. She wanted to fix things not just for herself but for every kid who ever felt invisible or scared. But that evening, as she passed the old churchyard near Coldwater Creek, a police cruiser rolled up behind her. It wasn't unusual to see them patrolling, but the car didn't just pass. It slowed. Then it stopped. The doors opened and two officers stepped out. One younger, twitchy with nervous energy, the other older, smug, chewing gum like it was competition. They didn't say hello, they didn't ask if she needed help. They told her to stop walking and put her hands in the air. No explanation, no kindness. "Where you headed, girl?" the older one asked, circling her like she was prey. His tone wasn't curious, it was accusing. Malia glanced between the two men, confused and scared. "I'm going home," she replied, voice steady but low. "From school." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. What followed wasn't an arrest. It wasn't a warning. It was something much darker, something that left a scar deeper than any bruises ever could. They made her sit on the dirt beside the tree line. Then stand, then sit again. They said they were just having a little fun, laughing, mocking. One even filmed a bit of it on his phone. Just a joke, they said. When they used the old belt from their trunk to tie her wrists behind her back and looped it around a tree, it wasn't because she had done anything wrong. It was because they could. And in that moment, beneath the rustling leaves and dimming sky, they didn't see a child. They didn't see a daughter, a student, or a future lawyer. They only saw someone they thought no one would care about. But Malia said one thing, just one sentence, that changed everything, and it terrified them. Miles away, at that very same moment, another young black teen was making a small choice that would ripple across lives in ways he couldn't imagine. His name was Andre, 17, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of kid who always helped carry groceries for elderly neighbors and didn't care if anyone noticed. On a packed city bus, standing among briefcases and backpacks, he noticed a pregnant white woman struggling to find a seat. Her belly was round, her face flushed with discomfort. Without hesitation, Andre tapped a man who looked to be dozing in the priority seat and asked him politely if he could give the woman his spot. The man ignored him, so Andre gave up his own. He stood the rest of the ride, arms clinging to the metal pole, swaying as the bus jerked forward. He didn't do it for thanks. But the woman noticed. Her eyes met his with something like shock, then something deeper. Gratitude. She whispered thank you and reached into her purse. What she handed him wasn't just a note. It was a lifeline. The paper was small, folded, worn at the edges like it had been waiting for him. On it were a few words that at first made no sense. But they would soon. And when they did, they would tie his story to Malia's in a way no one could have predicted. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come with flashing lights in courtrooms. Sometimes, it starts with a whisper under a tree. Sometimes, it begins with a seat on a crowded bus. And sometimes, two stories collide so loudly the whole country is forced to listen. But for now, the town of Shiloh was quiet again. Malia stood tied to that tree, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. The officers had stopped laughing. Something in her eyes, something in the words she just said. It had struck a nerve. Their smirks faded. The camera stopped, recording. They looked at each other, confused, and then afraid. Because what Malia said wasn't just a threat, it was a truth. And truths, especially the dangerous ones, don't stay buried forever. What did she say? You'll find out. But when? You do remember, this isn't just a story, it's a warning. The older officer, badge 782, Malia would later remember, took a step back, his jaw tightening. His partner, the younger one, barely out of the academy, suddenly didn't seem so sure anymore. The laughter had died in their throats, replaced by a strange kind of silence. Malia's voice hadn't been loud, but it had been steady, the kind of voice that didn't beg, didn't break, and the words she spoke, just 12 of them, cut through the thick southern air like a blade. Know who my mother really works for. She's not just a nurse. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She looked straight at them, chin high, wrists still bound to the rough bark of the tree. And the fear that crawled into the older officer's eyes wasn't the kind that comes from guilt. It was the kind that comes from knowing you messed with the wrong one. But neither of them moved. They were frozen, caught in the weight of their own choices and now forced to consider what might come next. Malia's mother, Cassandra James, was known in town as the quiet woman who worked long shifts at the regional medical center. She wore scrubs every day, drove an old Toyota Corolla, and minded her business. But what most people didn't know, and what Cassandra never talked about, was that she hadn't always been just a nurse. She'd once been part of a federal task force, a medical analyst working with the Department of Homeland Security on DITU, classified bioterrorism preparedness. Her clearance was top level. Her contacts, still very active, but that wasn't all. There were whispers, old rumors that Cassandra had ties to someone even higher. A sister, a cousin, someone deep within. The Justice Department. Malia had never asked directly. She just listened, observed, picked up things like kids do, quietly, from behind doors and over phone calls made late at night. She didn't know every detail, but she knew enough to speak that sentence with full confidence. Enough to change. The power in the air, and now those officers felt it. Back at the station, dispatch was unusually quiet. Sheriff Dawson, an old man with ties to almost every family in Shiloh, was out for the week. Some fishing trip up in Kentucky. That left the younger deputies to do as they pleased, and lately, some of them had been letting that power go to their heads. Folks had been talking, whispers about stops made without reason, kids searched on sidewalks, phones taken, mostly black kids. And now, here they were, with a teenager tied to a tree at the edge of a creek, hearts racing, regret blooming. Like poison in their veins, the younger cop finally spoke, his voice unsure. Maybe we should let her go. The older one shot him a look. You serious? She's bluffing. Are you sure? The rookie replied, eyes flicking to the road. What if she's not? For a long second, no one moved. Meanwhile, across the county, Andre was still holding the note the woman had given him. He hadn't opened it on the bus. Something about the way she handed it to him felt personal, almost sacred. Now he sat on a park bench 2 blocks from his house, the sky darkening overhead, the paper resting in his palm. The bench creaked beneath him as he unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was neat, slanted, rushed. If you're reading this, someone will contact you soon. Don't ignore it. You may have saved more lives than you realize. My father owes your family everything. Trust him. He hasn't forgotten what your grandfather did in 1963. Andre stared at it. What was this? His grandfather had passed before. He was born. All Andre knew was that he'd marched in Selma, that he'd been arrested more than once for protesting back in the civil rights era. But what did that have to do with now? And who was this woman's father? His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He didn't answer. Not yet. Something about all this felt too big, too strange. And yet he felt it in his gut. It was real. The note, the timing, the weight behind those words. In Shiloh, Cassandra James was pacing the living room. Her daughter hadn't come home. Malia was never late. She always texted, always called. She'd tried the school, no answer, called friends, Nothing. The pit in her stomach had turned into a full-blown storm. And then she'd gotten the text, an anonymous number. Just a street name and 2 words. Come alone. Cassandra wasn't a fool. She pulled a thin black case from the closet, opened it, and removed a small device no one in town would have expected. Her to own. A secure, government-issued satellite phone. She tapped a number that hadn't been used in 5 years. It rang once, then silence. A calm voice answered. "You're active?" "I need help," Cassandra said, breath short. "Now they have my daughter." "Who?" "Shiloh PD, 2 of them, and she said something they'll regret hearing." "Understood. Sit tight. Eyes are already on the town." She ended the call. She grabbed her keys. She left, and in the woods, by Coldwater Creek, the officers still hadn't untied Malia. She stood still, eyes locked with the older officers, watching the cracks form in his confidence. Her arms ached. Her legs were numb, but her voice was steady. "You still think I'm bluffing?" He blinked. Behind them, headlights flickered through the trees. A car approaching. Slow. The rookie stiffened. "We gotta move," he hissed, but it was too late. The vehicle stopped. A black SUV, government plates, tinted windows. The doors didn't open. The engine didn't turn off. It just sat there, silent, watching. The older officer turned pale. The rookie stepped back from the tree. Inside the SUV, someone was watching. Through the windshield. Face unreadable, eyes sharp. The power had shifted again. And this time it wasn't coming back. Malia didn't flinch. She just kept staring. She knew help had arrived, but the question now was, what came next? Because when you challenge power, it doesn't just give up, it pushes back, and sometimes tries to bury what it can't control. But this time it picked the wrong girl. And far away on a quiet park bench, Andre's phone buzzed again. He stared at the screen. This time the message had a name, Agent R. Owens. "We need to talk. It's about Malia James." Andre's hands went cold. Who was Agent Owens? And what did they know that he didn't? One thing was clear. Whatever he had stepped into on that bus, it wasn't just a good deed. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Andre didn't reply to the message. Not yet. He stared at it, his thoughts racing, hands cold. Who was Agent Owens? How did they know Malia? And why were they texting him? All he had done was give up a seat. But now everything was spiraling into something bigger, something deep and tangled, with roots he didn't understand yet. He read the note again. "You may have saved more lives than you realize." The words hit different now. They weren't just about kindness, they were a warning, or maybe a promise. In the SUV near Coldwater Creek, the driver finally stepped out. He didn't wear a uniform, but his presence said more than any badge could. Black suit, no tie, calm eyes, quiet footsteps. He walked up to the officers like he had every right to be there, like he wasn't afraid of anything. Not the dark, not the woods, not them. The rookie was the first to speak. "Sir, we were just—" But the man cut him off with a glance. Then he looked at Malia and everything changed. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His silence said it all. One slow step at a time. He reached into his coat, pulled out a knife. Not a weapon, but a tactical tool. And with one smooth motion, he sliced through the belt around Malia's wrists. She winced, rubbing her hands, the skin red and raw. He didn't touch her. He didn't tell her to calm down. He just stood there with her for a moment. Present. Solid. Then he turned to the officers. "She's coming with me," he said. "Under." "What?" The older cop started. The man raised one finger. "Not a word," he said. "You'll answer later, to someone much higher." That was when the second SUV pulled up. This one had tinted windows too, but more official looking. Out stepped 2 more agents, both dressed the same. One was holding a tablet. The other already had a phone to their ear. They weren't just responding to a call. They had been tracking. Everything. Watching. Listening. They were here because someone, somewhere, had triggered a protocol that bypassed local law enforcement completely. Cassandra arrived seconds later, tires crunching on gravel. She rushed to Malia, pulling her daughter into her arms, holding her like the world was ending. No tears, just strength, relief, and fury, buried just under the surface. Malia whispered something into her mom's ear. Cassandra nodded. She turned. To the man in the suit. "I want names," she said. "You'll have them," he replied. The older officer finally spoke. "We didn't hurt her." The man turned slowly. "You tied a minor to a tree in the woods with no cause, no call-in, and you filmed it. We're pulling your dash cams, your phones, your radios. You won't be working a desk by the time the sun rises." The rookie lowered his head. The older one looked away, but the damage was already done. Back in the city, Andre finally stood from the bench. He felt like he'd been sitting there for hours, but it hadn't even been 30 minutes. He knew now this wasn't just about a seat on a bus. This wasn't even just about Malia. Someone had connected dots that went deeper than he could see. His grandfather, a mysterious woman, government agents, and now his name was involved. He called the number back. A voice answered immediately. Calm. Male. "Andre?" "Yeah, good. Don't say anything out loud, just listen. We need you to come in tonight." Andre's heart pounded. "Why me?" "Because your grandfather protected someone once, and that person never forgot. You've just been pulled into the second half of that promise." "What does this have to do with Malia?" "She's the reason everything's moving faster than expected." Her words changed the timeline. "We need to move." Andre looked around. "Where?" "We're sending a car. 20 minutes. Don't tell anyone. Just be ready." The line went dead. Andre sat back down, staring at his phone. He had no idea what he'd just agreed to. But something inside him said not to ignore it. This was bigger than a single choice. This was the kind of story people usually never heard about, because it never made the news. Because someone made sure it stayed in the shadows. At the same time, Malia was riding in the back of the SUV with her mother. No one had said much since they left the scene. The man in the suit, who still hadn't given a name, sat in front, focused, talking quietly into an earpiece. Malia's hand still shook a little, but she didn't cry. She was thinking, processing, and asking questions. She turned to her mother. "What did you used to do?" Cassandra looked at her for a long moment. "I helped people who were in danger," she said finally. "And I kept secrets even from you." Malia nodded slowly. "So are we in danger?" Cassandra looked ahead. "Not yet, but we're in the middle of something now, and it's not going away." Behind them, another SUV followed. The agents weren't just protecting Malia anymore. They were preparing something. Moving pieces like a chessboard. Someone, somewhere, had seen a storm coming, and the tie between Andre, Malia, and that mystery woman on the bus was only the beginning. In another part of the city, in a sleek office surrounded by screens, an older man in a gray suit was watching it all unfold. His fingers drummed on the table slowly, eyes locked on the footage from one of the officers' phones, the part before the video cut out. Malia, tied to the tree, looked directly into the camera. She said her sentence, then stared without fear. The man leaned back in his chair. "Find out who trained her," he said quietly. His assistant frowned. "She's 14. She didn't blink," the man replied. "Somebody taught her how to stand in fear and still speak the truth." He paused. "And someone else is pulling strings behind all this. I want to know who." Outside his window, the city glowed like a machine, cold and quiet. And somewhere within it, Andre's car was approaching. The storm hadn't broken yet, but it was coming.